Thank you for joining us for a conversation, a writer's guide to the Library of Congress. When I wrote the script for In Her Words, I researched for months, reading interviews featuring the women in the stage production of In Her Words that I produced through my Liberated Muse Arts Group, a multidisciplinary company where we perform, we do workshops, we do a whole host of things, transforming spaces into art places. When preparing for In Her Words, I read and listened to the work of the women that were featured in the presentation extensively. And one of my many pleasures during this research phase was perusing the archives at the Library of Congress. It was in the archives where I found recordings of Zora Neale Hurston presenting her anthropological research, and I heard her actual speaking voice.
I got that old black gal is a spiking song that I got down there in Miami and was sung by Max Ford, the singing line on this construction crew. Used for spiking down the rails. That old black gal keep on grumbling.
I was stunned. I was thrilled. It was so exciting.
That old black girl keep on grumbling. New pair of shoes, Lord. New pair of shoes.
This week, I have been engaged in presentations for the Festival of Literary Arts, through the Prince George's Arts and Humanities Council, and this discussion is one of the offerings. Today, I talk with the wonderful Nicholas Alexander Brown-Cáceres to learn how writers can use the library when preparing their work, whether you are a playwright and poet like me, or a writer of fiction or nonfiction. Please enjoy the conversation. We will have questions towards the end, and you can type your questions in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're glad you're here. Today's guest is Nicholas Alexander Brown-Cáceres, a Honduran-American library executive, arts producer, and musician based in the Washington, D.C. area. In 2023, he was appointed Assistant Chief of the Library of Congress Music Division, which is the largest music library in the world. He is also adjunct faculty in the Department of Library and Information Science at the Catholic University of America. He is a member of the Maryland State Library Board and music director and founder of the Irvin Fine Society. Brown-Cáceres serves on advisory boards for both the Catholic University and University of Maryland iSchool Graduate Library and Information Science programs. So welcome, my friend. How are you?
I am well. How are you?
I am well. So I want to just let folks know that I had the pleasure of meeting you for the first time last year. You were part of the panel that selected the poet laureate for Prince George's County while you were the interim CEO of Prince George's County Memorial Library System. And
Yes.
I think it's important for folks to know because folks ask me all the time, like, how did you become the poet laureate? And
I know.
it's because of esteemed folks, as a panel of esteemed folks such as yourself. But you, during your tenure with the library system, which I told folks last night, our library system is first class. I can't even pick a favorite library we're so lucky to have such a quality library system. And during your tenure, it became an award-winning library system with all of the things that you really led the system to having. So thank you for that.
My pleasure.
And congratulations on your appointment with the Library of Congress.
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be here, and thank you all for joining tonight. I really appreciate the opportunity to stay connected with Khadijah and all of my colleagues here in Prince George's County. I live in the county. I'm in unincorporated Bowie Mitchellville that should be just called Largo, but you know how 202 plays games with everyone. So because everyone, there's baggage when you say Bowie, and I'm not in that part of Bowie. So happy to be closer to the metro and that kind of thing.
You keeping it real. You starting out keeping it real. I love that
Well,
so much.
you
Right.
know, it's the
And
only
we
way to
know,
be in my book.
right. And that's important to mention now that we're in tax season. We just finished tax season, and that's what they ask in terms of what town you are in Prince George's, whether it's incorporated or not. That's
Hmm.
hilarious. So I'm really happy with the amount of folks that have shown up for today's conversation, because that means that, and 'cause this was specifically marketed as a writer's guide, so that means that we have writers in the house, and I'm excited about that. And I can't, as the intro suggested or told you, I am a multidisciplinary writer. So I'm not just a poet, I'm a playwright. I do fiction, but I really lead with my playwright and my poet voice. And so the Library of Congress was so crucial in preparing for my In Her Words presentation. And then it just has become a resource for me for other productions that I do, but also when doing historical poetry as well. And so I think that it's a gem that is like hidden right in front of your face, right?
Hmm.
And I don't think that we understand the access that we have to it digitally, in addition to coming in, or what beyond copyright, how we can use the space. And so I
Sure.
wanted you to kind of lead us through understanding what the resources are for us as a writer. So
Awesome.
I'll let you start with where you want to jump in.
Yeah. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk in this manner because I, believe it or not, don't often get to talk to a lot of writers. I am usually more on the musician side and scholars who are writing about music. But the Library of Congress is a treasure trove of discovery and points of inspiration for you all in your work, aside from the functions that we have in terms of actually boosting your work with the copyright protections that you can get through us and that kind of thing. But there are countless people across every discipline who use the library on a daily basis to um, explore, be inspired, find media assets for their own publications, look at productions of plays from the Works Progress Administration Federal Theater Project and figure out how to remake those and to reimagine wonderful works from the past. We have a strong role in also creating content, whether that is through our programs like the consultancy in poetry, which is the U.S. National Poet Laureate position, and then they get a lot of free reign to develop programs that align with their own interests. To commissioning music, which we've been doing since 1925, and we've commissioned over 650 major composers, living composers, to write new works. And that is not something that people outside the music world know much about, but it's a huge deal that the National Library of the United States has actually been able to invest in creating and advancing artistic disciplines rather than just being a repository, because we really view being a repository about creating the foundation for more creativity to happen,
Mhm.
whether it's completely original, whether it's based on previous works or historical themes, historical figures, etc. So I'm going to give you some very high-level overviews of some of the things that are happening at the library, and then we're going to get a bit deeper into how to navigate some of the resources, because that is where folks like me can come in handy in terms of helping you kind of make sense of the confusing, sometimes millions and millions of items. And oftentimes you might put in a search and then you get no results, but the chances are 9 times out of 10 we actually do have something that you might be looking for. You just haven't come across it yet. And I'm going to make sure that you get the behind the scenes pro tips of how to navigate things so that you can get to what you need. And I know many of you have probably engaged with the library in one way, shape, or form in your careers or in life, and there may be some repetition here or maybe things that are new to you. And when we get to discussion later, I'd love to hear your own thoughts on some of these matters as well. Can everyone see my screen okay? Okay. So for our Writer's Guide to the Library, from the Music Guy's hat, we're going to give you a bit of a snapshot overview of the library's history, just so everyone's kind of aware of the origin story, because I think that plays a lot into how we are continuing to evolve. Then we're going to touch upon the three kind of touch points that the current librarian's vision has put forward for ways that folks can engage, and those are engage, inspire, and inform. And then we're going to kind of shift to how you can connect to do your own work and engage with the library. So about the library, we're going to talk briefly about our origins, our facilities, and who we serve. The Library of Congress is one of the 3 national libraries in the United States. I bet maybe not everyone knew that there are 3 national libraries, but we're the big kahuna one and we're the mothership. There's also the National Library of Medicine and the National Agricultural Library. And in those institutions' names, you can pretty much figure out what is different about their collections. So if something is written about clinical medicine, it's going to mostly go over to the National Library of Medicine versus coming to us. However, we do still have some medical materials. We do still have some agricultural materials. We have over 175 million items. It's very difficult to kind of provide an exact, accurate count. We basically know how much is brought into the library on a daily basis, and every so often there is a kind of total count that happens, and then those counts are revised based on the knowledge of how much is coming in. And who do we serve? This is the most important thing. We serve everyone. In the origin story that I'm about to tell you, we did not serve everyone, but very quickly over time, we started to serve everyone, and that's really important. Anyone can get a reader card, just has to be ages 16 and up, and if you're under 16, you can come in with an adult to do research and use our facilities under certain conditions. Also, you do not have to be an American. You also don't have to ever come to our facilities in person to use our resources, and I'm going to get a lot more into that later on. Some of you may or may not realize that we have many buildings, and the most famous one is, of course, our flagship building here with the dome on Capitol Hill. And this is an unusual kind of viewpoint of the buildings, but the Jefferson Building is here in the middle with the dome. It was opened in 1897. You can see behind it is the Supreme Court. So we're looking north on First Street here, and cut out of the photo is the Capitol Building, which would be to the left. Down at the bottom is the James Madison Memorial Building, which is our most recently constructed one on the Hill. It opened in the early 80s, and this is where the majority of collections and staff are on Capitol Hill. It's actually 6 floors above ground and 3 below ground. Takes up the whole block. And then in the right corner here is the John Adams Building. So these are our 3 presidents who were really important to the founding of the Library of Congress. We also have the National Audiovisual Conservation Center, which is out in Culpeper, Virginia. It's where the audio and video collections are physically stored. We also have several overseas offices that are responsible for collecting materials published in different parts of the world for the library's collection. So the library was established in 1800 as the official library of the Congress, which was wonderful. So it was there to serve members of Congress and their staff so that they could do their work. Our friends, the British, torched the building in 1814. Not a surprise to any of us who live in the DC area. We see this history everywhere, even if we don't realize it. Battle of Bladensburg did not go our way. Eventually, the city got torched, right? So after the War of 1812, Thomas Jefferson, who is a very problematic figure for a lot of reasons, did a very savvy PR move, and he sold his library to Congress to help restart the Library of Congress. He sold over 6,000 volumes. This was the largest collection of books on the North American continent at the time. And he got quite a paycheck. It was around $24,000 at the time. That reestablished the library, and his collection is really what we see as the origins of the contemporary library, with the rare books and the special discipline materials. He even had music books, for example, in that collection that was sold. There were a couple fires that happened over the 19th century, which we will only answer questions on if you want to know more about that, but destroyed, unfortunately, some parts of the collection. There was a really important moment that happened in 1870 where the copyright system was updated in the United States, and the copyright registration process was centralized to the Library of Congress. Before that, if you were a creator and you were able to get protections for your work, which was a pretty narrow group of creators who could, you would file through the district court local to you. But in 1870, that was centralized in part to build the National Library's collection. And that is where a lot of sheet music started coming in, and things that were not traditional materials like books and maps and that kind of thing. So This is a picture of Jefferson's Library as it is displayed in the Thomas Jefferson Building. It's quite a showpiece, and it will be relocated in an upcoming renovation of the visitor areas that are happening. But what's really neat about this collection of books and then the physical spaces of the library is that there's this really intentional attempt to connect what happens creatively here with the history before us, Western civilization, Eastern civilization, even the influence of religions, not just Christianity, but Judaism, Islam as well, are actually physically in the artwork of this building in a very specific way that speaks to, at the time, what was viewed as the diversity of influences on the United States. Of course, not appropriately representing the way we think about that today, but a relic of its time for sure. So the library's mission right now is to engage, inspire, and inform Congress and the American people with a universal and enduring source of knowledge and creativity. So our primary focus on paper still is Congress, right? And we have a lot of functions that really cater to Congress, but we really are the National Library that serves a global public. We serve everyone from middle school students coming to music workshops to senior citizens who are coming to do genealogy research. And we even reach people that folks might not realize, like we have a surplus books program where members of Congress can work with local public libraries and nonprofit partners to get surplus books from the Library of Congress for free to use for their programs and services in local areas. And that is something that you all can do as well. Our vision is to connect all Americans to the Library of Congress. So there is always this kind of balance between America is our focus because America pays our bills, right? But America, it does not exist in a vacuum. America is a reflection of the world around us and the people who come to this country under a lot of different circumstances. This is a cool picture of one of the artists from Sista Strings, which appears with Brandi Carlile. They got to be in the Gershwin Prize show honoring Elton John with us a couple weeks ago. And this is actually our Stradivarius cello. And she got to play on that instrument. And we believe that the two of them on these instruments, they were the first to play Lift Every Voice and sing on these instruments from the late 1600s, and also the first to sing while playing on the instruments because they actually sang it while they played. And we're going to have some video coming out soon about that. Some of the goals that inform the work that goes on, we're always looking at expanding access, enhancing our services, strengthening capacity, and fostering innovation. Strategic plans are not always the most exciting thing in the world, but I think they're really important because they can be used to make the case for the work that we need to be doing in terms of engaging our constituents. So here we get to the meat here, engaging with the collections. The Library of Congress's collections are vast, as I mentioned. We use a lot of library language, but it's helpful for you to know about this language in order to kind of direct how you're going to seek materials and seek information, if only because the librarians and the information professionals who are working with you are going to use these terms, even if we're trying to make it more accessible. So we kind of generally divide our collections into two buckets. There's general collections, and then there's special collections. Where that really breaks down is that special collections are the archives of people or entities, and that can be physical archives, it can be digital, it can be both. General collections are typically the materials that are mostly coming to us through the copyright registration and deposit process. So the U.S. Copyright Office receives applications to register works. They go through their process of adjudicating if the work is going to get registration. And then those materials that are registered, and we have a collections development policy that dictates what the Copyright Office transfers to the library custodial divisions to consider for adding to the permanent collection of the library. So Mythbuster alert here is that we do not have everything and we do not keep everything that is sent into the Library of Congress. We have more than everyone else, which is really cool, but it is physically impossible for us to be comprehensive with storing and preserving everything. So if you ever go to library school, take the collections development course because it's really important to know that that is the point where you can influence the making sure that collections are diverse for future generations and looking back, and also recognizing that what we might consider appropriate application of comprehensiveness or diverse representation now isn't probably going to track to what's going to be in the future. So you have to approach the way that we collect so that we're not creating gaps based on current knowledge, which is somewhat effective sometimes. And then digital collections kind of overlay both of these. So there's material like if you publish an ebook, that will be a digital collection material. Digital is just really speaking to the format, whereas general and special are talking about the nature of the content and how we acquired it.
And can I just ask, when it comes to that, a
Mhm.
lot of times with general and special, it's not where something that was originally in print is then transformed into a digital, like an ebook. It's actually photocopied or it, it,
Skimmed.
it is included in the archives in its original status, even though you're accessing it digitally, if that makes sense. I don't know how to
Right.
explain it better than that.
Yeah, so let's say, for example, we have this project called Chronicling America, which is a partnership with NEH. And that project digitizes community newspapers across the country to provide digitized access. That has been a really important way that we could make newspaper and periodical collections more widely available across the country. But that then has implications for the physical materials. If something's fragile, we might not serve that, and we might not, and then we might direct people to the digital version, which in library speak would be a digital surrogate. There's other cases too when we have really rare manuscripts, like let's say Max Roach, wonderful jazz artist and civil rights advocate. We have his original like handwritten manuscripts and annotations on his autobiography. That's not something that we can put online at the moment because of copyright restriction and permissions from the estate. However, if it were out of copyright protections, we could consider putting it online, and then if the materials are fragile, directing people to that online version. And so if you think about microfilm, if you ever got to handle those materials, which some of us still have at the library, think of digital as what microfilm did in terms of providing more access and helping with preservation goals. So I'm going to poke around on some of our resources, and I'm happy to share these slides afterwards, but there's a few main things you need to know, and this is pro tips. Nick, the researcher, I'm not speaking on behalf of my employer for the next 5 minutes. There's a lot of different layers and points of entry to understanding our resources for collections. The main home landing place is loc.gov, right? That's probably not shocking or news to you, but we're going to start there. I'm going to switch my screen. Let me know if you can see my browser now once this loads. Can you see the browser? It's got LPs on the...
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So this is our homepage. And on the homepage is a lot of cool, flashy information. Current initiatives are always featured here, etc. Access points, free collections for reuse, etc. In library world, this is called a discovery layer. And what it does is it aims to aggregate as much of the resources that we have as possible into a single search box. However, that single search box is only as comprehensive as the contents of our collections that are linked into this technology. So while this is the most comprehensive search point, know that everything in our online catalog is not represented in this search. This is really important. What this is going to give you is a certain number of collection items that are represented with digital collections records. It's going to give you links to research guides and finding aids and material that is not copyrighted that we have permission to have up online for people to reuse. So as an example, I'm going to put in, let's say, Duke Ellington's name here in the search. You see we get 28,000 items available online, 33,000 total items. And then you can see the breakdown by format here. The majority of these are newspaper. And then look at audio recording. There's 12 listed here for Duke Ellington. Yet you know we're the National Library, right? So this is where it's important to know that using our online access points, these are a tool for discovery, but they should never be viewed as comprehensive just because we have too much for any of our access points to be comprehensive. So one thing to know, audio recordings, and this impacts a lot of poetry collections, etc. Though the poetry program, fortunately, has a lot digitized. This is an entry point, and if you can't find something in this main loc.gov search, please do not be discouraged. That is normal. That is something that experts have worked at the library deal with, even if they've worked there for 30 years. So what you need to know about special formats like audio recordings and film recordings is that this discovery layer and even our online catalog do not fully represent what is in those collections. There's actually a separate database that you can only use on site that has the most of the metadata around those collections, but even then, it's not going to be totally 100%. So the gist of this is if you hit a wall with your exploration, you've got to contact us because you can directly ask the team of reference librarians that is responsible for a certain collection area if we have something, and they'll do the well, they're not going to they're going to check the resources that they have available to give you an answer of what is available and how you can access it. And then if they don't have the answer, they're going to direct you around. So for example, if someone said to me, "Hey Nick, where are the Duke Ellington audio recordings?" I would say to them, we have those in our National Audiovisual Conservation Center collection. However, I'm not responsible for them. This is how you can connect with them. Or there's going to be a process where I can link the researcher with the appropriate reference staff who are solely responsible for sound recordings. So we're going to get you to the right expert internally. And the best thing that you can do for yourself is just put something out there to us, and then we'll help you get to the right place.
Would
So,
they find the contact at the bottom of the website?
So important thing to know is about our Ask a Librarian service, and that is if you go to the homepage in the menu bar here, go to Ask a Librarian. And I have this link directly in the slides that you'll be able to get to. But you can see you can actually send a message directly to the experts in each of these areas. So we have folks who address questions by subject and format. So in my case, that's performing arts. There's prints and photographs. There's rare books. Recorded sound by region and language group. So if you have, let's say, for example, you're a Spanish speaker and you want to send in a reference inquiry in Spanish, well, that might be able to go through the region folks, or that could come to a subject area too, and we'll get it to someone who speaks Spanish. Then you can also send in questions by programs and services, whether that's about copyright, congress.gov, which is our legislation tracking website, poetry and literature, etc. So this is the place to go to create that interaction with our staff. There is a chat service that is available sometimes. The other thing that you can do, so you're aware, is you can actually come on site and just show up cold at a reading room. We actually have 17 reading rooms on the Capitol Hill campus, and we'll give you assistance then. But what's really good about connecting with us in advance is that it gives us the opportunity to get you as much information as we can so that your time used on site is efficient, because you would never want to come and be told, sorry, we can't get that audio recording
Right.
for you today. It takes us at least 2 weeks to digitize it from Culpeper and get it onto our server so that you can access it on Capitol Hill. Or for example, in the special collections world, we have most of our materials actually offsite. So say you want X box of Max Roach as an example, and this may not be 100% accurate to what the status of where all the boxes are today, but it could be that we have to pull that from one of our offsite facilities and bring it down, and there might be at least a few days lag time. So when in doubt, always connect with us in advance. However, know that you can come in cold off the street if you want to, and we'll do our best to help you.
Can I ask this question? Because I had the privilege of coming in for the first time in the Library of Congress when I was a student. I was a McNair scholar, and so um, we had to do research. So we came in and did the tour, and this was actually before everything was like, I'm old like that.
No,
Do you have to have a library, a Library of Congress card in order to ask a librarian and to get service?
you do not. That
Okay.
is a great question. So the only time where you need the library card as a researcher is to get into a reading room. Um, it's helpful to have one, but you don't have to have it in order to get our assistance. Totally open. Um, Great question.
Can
And
you get the
I've
card online now, or do you still have to
yes,
come in?
you can do the pre-registration online, but to get the physical card, you do have to come in,
Okay.
and we take a picture and give you the physical ID.
Okay.
So I'll show you that link as we go here. Just want to navigate over to the online catalog so you see this. This is the very traditional online catalog. Again, not 100% comprehensive, but it is here and it is a really good resource. So let's say we want to look up Ralph Ellison. We actually have Ralph Ellison's personal library and his papers in the manuscript division, I think it is. But as you can see, I just told you we have Ralph Ellison's collection, and his stuff is not coming up first here. So one of the things to know about this online catalog is that it's really important to try and narrow down your search. It's always good to start big and then work your way down, but there are some techniques to this. So I'm going to switch over to a music one just for kicks. Let's say Hazel Scott. If you don't know who Hazel Scott was, she was the first Black woman to host her own TV show, amazing pianist, married to Adam Clayton Powell Jr., and then that fell apart. But she's a wonderful figure whose papers we actually have. So you can put in a search term here. You can also narrow down your search by location of the library. So if as you go, you realize, okay, all of the collections I want to work on are in the manuscript division, you can narrow your search based on what division holds it. Right? So if you want to just search for Ellington sound recordings, let's actually go back to that. And that can be our through line. Ellington. Okay. And I'm going to reduce that to recorded sound. So there's a couple options. I can select the filter of the location in the library. I can also select the filter of type of material. So I can go to where did it go? Music recording. And then you can do by language and that kind of thing. So let's add those filters. Okay, this seems a little better. Almost 3,000 recordings of Ellingtons. But remember that discovery layer told us there were 12. So that is just an entry point. Online catalog is going to be way more comprehensive. But then even this is not 100% comprehensive. You got to go to the database and contact the recorded sound folks. And then you can do things like search by when and that kind of deal. Because time is tight, I'm going to fly for these other ones, which are really important. Another thing to know about is the finding aids. So finding aids are these documents and online pages where you can explore the special collections and just look at those. In the online catalog, for the most part, say, for example, the Ralph Ellison papers, there's going to be a collection level record for that in the online catalog. But if you want to dive deeper into the folder level of that person's archive, you got to go to the finding aid if one exists. There is not a finding aid for every special collection. We have far too many special collections to keep up with creating the finding aids, though it's gotten a lot better. So let's say here, for example, if I want to find every instance in the special collections of, let's say, Langston Hughes, there's 55 collections with finding aids that have a reference to Langston Hughes. So that can mean a lot of different things. That could mean that there's correspondence to or from him. That could mean that there's business documents involving him. That could be a program from an event that someone attended where he was there speaking. And there's a lot of different rabbit holes that you can go down. But one thing that you'll start to learn from looking at hey, we found Ralph Ellison. Look at that. It all comes together. It must have been intentional. One of the things that's really cool, that's helpful to know as you get used to looking at these pages that we have, is that you can glean a lot of information just by scrolling through this list of results.
Yeah.
I'm seeing that almost every result, at least so far, is referencing the manuscript division. So in my head, that tells me, if I want to look at Ralph Ellison in the special collections, the manuscript division should be my first stop. And that's something that you can deduce without even asking for help. You can also see here, for example, we have stuff in the music division in Hazel Scott's papers. Another connection. Look at that.
That's funny.
And you can over here.
Can we see? Can you click on Ralph
Sure.
Ellison? Can we see some of the things that are there?
So when you look at a finding aid, there's a lot of information that is kind of up front. And if you're not used to looking at this, it's not going to maybe stick out as you. Not every special collection is created equally, right? Not every creator gives the same types of things. Some people give everything. Some people give certain types of materials. In the case of Ellison's collection, There's going to be here, there's always a description here in summary. There's correspondence, organizational correspondence and reports, family papers, drafts, notes, production files for novels, essays, poetry, short stories, reviews, and other writings, speeches, lectures, and interviews, reference file, etc. So this is literally, you can go through Ralph Ellison's reference file that he used for doing his work. That's nuts. But that is the level of resource that we have. If you were someone to, for example, be publishing, let's say, a journal article about one of his works, or doing a translation of one of his manuscripts, something like that, there's so much information here that is at your fingertips that we can't even come to terms with describing at a huge level of detail, just because there's so much, and we really want the researchers to be the ones making the discoveries, not us. It's our role to create as much access as we can, and then turn it over to the researchers, and then hopefully we develop relationships with the researchers, where we're going to hear about the great findings that they discover. So each finding aid is presented online in two ways. There's a kind of web HTML version, and then there's a PDF version, which, depending on your habits with online, the PDF version might be a lot easier to search, because if you search on here, it can be a little difficult to navigate if there's multiple hits. So I'm actually going to go over to the PDF version just so you can see that, because that's my preferred way of interacting. And this is what the PDFs look like. It'll tell you when the PDF was created, if there were any revisions, or when the finding aid was created. It's also going to tell you how many items there are, what's the size of the collection, who's the administrative holder of it, who are some of the major figures represented in the collection. So where we see Langston Hughes here, that's why we got a search hit for him earlier. And you're going to see organizations referenced, subjects, and if you think about a book, right? If you publish a book and on the inside cover it's got the Library of Congress subject headings that are identified at the pre-publication stage, we do that for a special collection for a major writer like this too. That's about creating the access for when people are searching for the materials. There's going to be background information about how we got the materials, and that's called provenance. In our world, it's really important to know that things were acquired legitimately, and to say how we got them. And then there's always in these a statement about access and restrictions. Here's a pro tip, because you're all creators. Right? Copyright is the thing that benefits you, benefits us, and it benefits the public too. What we do that's really important is we make sure that we give as much information as we can about the rights status of the materials in these collections. We also have rights statements on every individual catalog record. But this is going to say to you that the papers of Ralph Ellison are open. There are closed series, so there's actually material in this collection that you would not, as a researcher, be able to handle because the material is too fragile. But there are photocopies available of the originals that you can't handle. And you are advised to contact their reading room before visiting. The other thing that I would mention that doesn't apply necessarily in this case is that some of the special collections of living or more recently deceased folks may have restrictions and embargoes on accessing certain parts of their collections. So, for example, a Supreme Court justice, if we get their papers, like we just announced semi-recently, Justice Sandra Day O'Connor's papers are at the library, there's going to be portions of her collection that are not accessible because there are restrictions that she and or her estate established to protect a lot of the sensitive things that she may have been doing. There's some biographical information, scope and content, and then it'll tell you the arrangement of the papers. So this is really useful because it's telling you exactly, okay, these are the types of thing in the collection, and this is how it's organized. So we're looking at correspondence. I'm a huge fan of the correspondence. This is literally getting in the brains and the friendships and the business relationships of these people. So a finding aid, if it exists, is going to give you generally folder level information. So if you see a picture of all these archival boxes on shelves, that's wonderful. The box has a number. Within the box, there are multiple folders. And with the finding aid, as detailed as we're going to get, is telling you what general information, so where is the correspondence between Alan B. Ballard and Ralph Ellison? It's in box 137, for example. And this is gold. The finding aids are really the best thing. For collections that have been more recently acquired, we may not have a finding aid yet. So that then goes into ask a librarian again, right? Hey, I know you have this collection. I notice there's no finding aid. Do you know if there's this type of material? And everyone at the library does their best to make sure that we can provide access to those unprocessed collections as quickly as possible, which actually means that you could be the one digging through, kind of coming up with some of your own discoveries before we've even done the metadata. And I
Wow.
know I'm getting too far into the weeds. I told you about Ask
Mhm.
Librarian. The other thing that most people don't think about, and this is a benefit for everyone that lives in the DMV, is that the Library of Congress has like the best e-resource collection of databases and paid online resources. However, they're only available on site. But if you're someone like me who has a lot of reason to go into academic library collections for one reason or
Mhm.
another,
Mhm.
for example, I am an adjunct professor, and sometimes Catholic turns off all my access because I am between courses or whatever. Well, the
Mhm.
Library of Congress will provide you access to all those same academic databases for free with your reader card on site, and
Mhm.
you can use your own device. But this is a huge deal. So, for example, JSTOR, Gale Resources, EBSCO, all those things. The public library actually offers a lot more of those than people realize. Like you can get
Mhm.
into a lot of the top tier EBSCO databases and like Academic Search Complete and ProQuest through your local public library, whether it's Prince George's or others. But Library of Congress is like going to an Ivy League university's e-resources, but you just can only access them online. But if you're interested in checking out what e-resources are available, eresources.lsc.gov is the place to go. Um, I told you that there are 17 reading rooms. It's a plethora of opportunities. So the main reading room is the big fancy one that everyone likes to look at, but guess what? You can only see general collections in there, and not even all of the general collections, only certain subject areas. So, for example, if you were wanting to look at a biography about Prince, you have to go to the performing arts reading room, even though
Oh
that's a general
wow.
collections material.
Okay.
You cannot see that in the main reading room. So
Wow.
this is just going to give you a sense. There's reading rooms that are focused on formats, and then there's reading rooms focused on special subject or thematic areas. So African and Middle Eastern reading room, the American Folklife Center, Asian, European, general collections in the main reading room, geography and map, Hispanic, law library, which is the largest law library in the world, the main reading room, as we mentioned, manuscript division, Moving Image Research Center, which is the film collections, newspaper and current periodical room, performing arts, prints and photographs, rare book and special collections, recorded sound, science, and business reading room. Now that I told you all that, forget about the categories because there's stuff spread out all over the place, and you cannot just go to one place for one type of thing, unfortunately. And this is just the nature of the beast with a big institution like ours. So, prints and photographs. This is the largest collection of photography and prints and visual art that exists in the world in terms of a number of items. However, there are many other places in the Library of Congress that have photography collections. In the performing arts world, we have multiple arts focused photography collections in our division. Thankfully, one of them, which is the Big Kahuna, which I'll show you, is um, the William P. Gottlieb collection. And if you've
Mm.
ever seen a famous jazz photo from like the mid 20th century, it was mostly his. And all of his are actually online and permitted for reuse. So, for example, if you need an image of Thelonious Monk for some publication, guess what? We've got the best image that probably exists, and you can use it for free without having to go get permission.
Mm.
And so, this is a case where there's a format collection that normally would be going to the prints and photographs division, but is actually in the music division because of a different administrative structure of how it got acquired. But our
Mm.
experts can tell you where to go. If you were to say, send in a message to prints and photographs, hey, I want to look at jazz photos. They would tell you what they have because they have like newspaper photography collections. And then they would say, you should also go to the music division because they have more. Um,
I love his Billie Holiday photos.
oh, yes. Yep. We have that up on display right now in our entry to the performing arts reading room. Let's see here. Maybe it'll load. While that is loading, we'll come back to it. I just wanted to highlight our research guides, which is a new kind of area of exploration. So
Oh,
if you've
great.
ever been in a university setting, subject librarians will create guides to the resources that exist around a certain subject area, around a course or whatever. to help lead you to these resources.
Mm-hmm.
And this will give you more ability to locate things. I think my internet has gotten a little wonky here. Let me go. Um, I'm going to go the performing arts route, but the link that is in the slides goes to all of them. So what is a research guide? It's a topical aggregation of materials to say, hey, if you're interested in researching, let's find an exciting one. It's all exciting, but let's do this one. Black composers, a guide to Black composers in the performing arts collections. This is not going to tell you every single thing that we have, but this is going to give you highlights about, hey, these are the major collections you should look at. These are some of the resources that are available online. Yes, we do have the Chevalier de Saint-Georges represented in our, actually, believe it or not, general collections, because things came in through copyright deposit for him. So these research guides are really cool because it gives you an extra layer of depth that you can pursue on your own before making that contact to the librarians. If you want to just skip all that and go to librarians, that's cool. But personally, as a researcher, I like to get as far as I can with my own sleuthing before I go to ask for help, which is always a challenging thing to get to. So you can look up the research guides by discipline area. Let's go back here. We also have resources called story maps, and let's go back here. So let's say the manuscript division, which we were looking at before, researcher resources, research guides, and there's a lot of them. These are pumped out all the time. If you want to look at architecture, archival sources, art topics.
Yeah, I feel like that is how I came across Zora's work is through one on the WPA.
Uh-huh. That would make sense.
Yeah,
And she was actually engaged as a consultant by the library to collect field recordings, where
yeah,
Lomax was working with the library as well.
that's fantastic.
Yep. And that kind of goes to the point that I made earlier about the library is really interested in content creation as well. And as we try and build our collections, whether it's with the music collections or others, there's actually been a lot of intentional effort to go out. Here you go. There's actually a whole Zora Neale Hurston research guide,
Mm-hmm.
which will tell you
Mm-hmm.
which are the special collections that you should start with,
Mm-hmm.
basically. And this is not comprehensive, but this is a starting point that has been developed thoughtfully to help researchers get to what they need to get to as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
that wasn't around when I started working on In Her Words in 2012, and that looked like I think it said 2021.
mhm,
They did that, but I was have recently been on this, and this is fantastic. This
yeah,
is even things that I didn't even come across when I was researching in 2012. But
cool.
I wanted to ask you, Nick,
Yep.
you all have events as well.
Yes. Yes, this jumps me to the Inspire section. So the library is not just about being the research hub, but it's about bringing people together, whether you're a local person, someone visiting DC, or a creator. So there's programs happening all the time. The profile of our programs evolve depending on what's going on at the library. There's exhibit-centric programs, there's poetry and literature programming, there's music programming. We have a really distinguished concert series that's been running for 100 years. We also have virtual programs, webinars. So if you want to go the next level with us, you can watch on-demand research orientations or attend a live research orientation for any number of subject areas. Our YouTube channel has a lot of that great content, and you can also see a lot on the website, where you can do this deep dive into like the minutia of how to use the performing arts collections or how to study poetry or how to do genealogy research. And programs are a really great way to get to meet fellow creators, believe it or not, it kind of in the way that the public libraries locally do, but just in a different scale and a little more formal on our side. So, you know, the Poet Laureate bringing a bunch of cool poets from around the country, like that's awesome. And local poets should be there. And that's your chance. Meet the U.S. Poet Laureate and form a connection.
Mhm.
And cross-disciplinary connections are really meaningful too. And what's cool with I mean, with our programs, just like with the library, a lot of people form relationships by meeting each other at these events. We have had people get married from meeting at our concerts, like more than one couple,
Wow.
believe it or not. So we're not a dating service, but hey, if you've got similar interests, you might cross paths at a library somewhere. So there's a website where I'll show you that you can sign up to get our email newsletter to get those alerts. The other piece of this that I know we don't have that much time to cover is the inform piece. And this is about how you are actually all part of the library's collections, whether it's through applying for a copyright registration and your materials being considered for collection in the library's permanent collections, or participating in workshops or crowdsource initiatives. And it's really important that you realize that the library is here for all of you. It doesn't mean that we want you all to come offer us all your stuff. However, if you do have stuff and you need advice on where to land it, we're always happy to help with answering questions. But it's to really hopefully realize that the Library of Congress is the nation's library. It is a living, breathing thing, and that if you are creating, you are part of the Library of Congress, even if your material is not necessarily on our shelves. Um, the materials that are hopefully going to be inspirational to you are there. And we are documenting this period in time in our country and in our world for the future to be able to study, because Lord knows we've got a lot going on that's going to be researched someday.
Yes,
I
indeedy.
will
Yes,
leave it at that.
indeedy.
So a few tidbits about how to connect with us long term. The Ask a Librarian is your best place to go for sending in research questions. Pre-register for a reader card. Register for our emails, and I'll show you this. If you go to loc.gov/subscribe, you can sign up for a whole host of different newsletters and alerts. You can sign up for event notices if you are hyper specific and just want to hear about poetry and literature events. You can do that. If you just want to hear about the National Book Festival, you can do that. If you want to hear about every single new finding aid that is posted on the website, like I do, you can hear about that. Sometimes I have to go on there to get news about things that I need to know about, so it's all good. But there's a lot of great information that is shared this way. This is what the reader card information page looks like, and there's a link in here to do the pre-registration. Lastly, I would encourage you all to follow us on social media, whatever platforms you're present on. We are probably there except for TikTok, because the federal government has its ways with TikTok. And then the other thing is that we have a lot of grant and fellowship opportunities that people don't realize are open to them. A lot of the programs are very specialized, but I'll show you the page. The most famous one is the Junior Fellow Program, which is a paid honorarium for a summer engagement with the library, and it's going to be very subject specific, and people apply to that. But there are research fellowships, and sometimes there's fellowships that have existed for a long time that are on a regular cycle for applications, and other times we have new ones. Like in my division, we just started a new postdoc fellowship this year that we're piloting, and then we're going to have that posted again next year. There's also a lot of institutional grants available. There's a big one right now called, I believe is the Connecting Communities. Let me pull it up for you. Community Collections Grant Application. I believe you have to be an institutional applicant potentially, but there's information and there's always webinars about these grant programs. I've had colleagues who have seen my posts on LinkedIn about these and actually won the grants to do interesting projects. So one of the things that the library is really keen on now is making resources available through private philanthropy partnerships that we're taking care of to help other institutions do the work at the local level that we could never possibly do effectively, and make sure that that work that happens out in communities all over the country is then documented in the United States, documented at the library for the National Collection. So you can see some of the recent winners here. Community Oral History Project in Baltimore. This is a wonderful Indigenous historian and artist. Project here about the Chaldean community in Michigan. So explore these opportunities, because the NEA and the NEH, while they're the big kahunas with grant funding, Library of Congress does have a lot of really interesting opportunities for creators and the institutions that you might be affiliated with to get to expand your impact. So I know that I have talked a lot, but I didn't even get to the iceberg of all the information that I could ever want to show or explain about engaging with the collections. But very, very briefly before going to any other questions, and I'm happy to go later than 7:30 if folks want that, is that the special collections in particular have so much that no one can possibly ever individually wrap their brain around. or have a fully comprehensive knowledge of. So it's really about coming down, if you can, or using the online resources to explore these collections to say, hey, did Leonard Bernstein have a relationship with Martin Luther King Jr.? Guess what? There's a box and a folder for that, and you can flip through those documents yourself.
Wow.
You can look at for example, Elton John copyright deposits of his songs. We pulled out the songs that inspired his lyricist collaborator Bernie Taupin. Um, there's so much in correspondence. There's unpublished manuscripts. There's unpublished essays. There's published materials. There's drafts with annotations from every famous writer who we collect. There's poetry recordings of every major American poet who has lived in the last 100 years, basically coming through the Library of Congress to record. June Jordan is a favorite of mine, and you want to hear June Jordan's voice reading her poetry.
Yes.
Guess what? The Library of Congress is the place to do that, and that's all digitized online. And I think the thing that I've discovered that is the most important piece of advice that I can give is that you will be blown away in ways that you can't even fathom by digging through these special collections of materials. And you will find inspiration that you didn't even expect, that you didn't plan for, and that might take you in a totally different direction. And we're here for that. We're here to support you. If you have questions, let us know. Nothing gives us joy more than having you all have discoveries. And then to see someone do something with this material that we have that brings their own creativity to the table is really a wonderful thing. So I'm sure I created more questions than I answered in this time.
You actually have some thank yous.
Oh, cool.
Michelle is saying that this has been very helpful. She says she applied for the innovator in residence position, was not accepted, but this presentation was eye-opening. I'm looking forward to becoming an LOC card carrier. So that's fantastic. And Carolyn, to your question, I will be sending a link that to this recording to those who registered for it. And I have emails, so I'll be sending it to you all that are on my mailing list. But I did have a question around because I didn't even know, I didn't even think to join your mailing list, which is ridiculous because I just go to the website regularly. But
Mhm.
I did have a question around you said that when people are sending in their work for copyright and trademark and those things, that they are not automatically um, retained in the Library of Congress in their entirety. But is there a place where they can access online where it's acknowledged that the Library of Congress has processed the copyright or the trademark?
Yeah, so the copyright.gov webpage is the place with all of the information. I'm not a copyright expert on the level of some folks that are out there, including my former copyright professor slash wonderful friend who's on here watching today. She is definitely an expert in it. So the copyright records will show what has been registered, and there are registration certificates that are searchable, and that information is available both on-site for researchers and off-site. And where that is really useful for you all is if you were to ever do what's called a derivative work or be interested in doing derivative work. So let's say, for example, there's a Ralph Ellison unpublished essay, and you want to do a one-woman spoken word stage work based on that essay. You can actually go look through the copyright registration records to see who is the owner of the copyright at the time of the registration. And that can help you as a resource if you haven't been able to figure out who the contact is outside. For the special collections that we have, so Ellison is a good example, you can go to the folks in the manuscript division and say, hey, who is the rights holder for this collection? I need to ask them for permission for derivative work or whatever. So we can be helpful with a lot of that kind of legwork that you might not realize that we can help with, I would say. So the other area that we keep the records of the materials is the cataloging and publication program. So that is what I mentioned in the front of a book. And if I have a book here, not an endorsement, but Prince George's County author sequel, you should read it. Nikki Payne. So, and this page, sorry, it's a little hard with there you go. This information here, it says Library of Congress cataloging in publication. So what this effectively does, and this is a layperson who's not a cataloger saying this to you, The publishers will send in the information about the forthcoming publications. We give some metadata to it so that then libraries, when they're going to receive the books, or bookstores, they've got the ability to make those items searchable so that when it arrives, it's servable. So that cataloging publication data is centrally available in the Library of Congress. So even if it's not something that's going to be retained for the permanent collection, there is a record that, for one, the cataloging and publication process happened, and then the copyright registration data if it was awarded this registration. The other thing that's important to know about with copyright generally, so we're the place for copyright. Patent and trade are handled through the U.S. Patent and Trade Office. Copyright is a legal protection right that is now afforded from the point of affixing the creative work onto a medium of expression. So that's a little convoluted. However, it means that you can go do a voice memo of some song lyrics or a poem or a haiku, and it is technically protected to a certain extent. However, the copyright registration process is a really important thing to do if you're if you want to protect your interest, if you were to ever have to go to address an infringement situation against you. So let's say that you are, let's pick an example. I'm not going to get into, there's a Taylor Swift example. That's a whole seminar that we can do that another day. But let's say you wrote a poem and Dr. Ali-Coleman posted on her website. That's something that she can do. It's her work, right? But let's say someone copies it without permission and sets it to music and puts it up on YouTube. That could be flattering. That could be something that could be monetized through YouTube. However, if you wanted to pursue an infringement claim against that, if you have the registration completed with the Copyright Office, it enables you to be able to go pursue accountability for those situations. So if you're someone who has a concern about making sure that you're protecting your earning potential on your intellectual property, it makes a lot of sense to go through the registration process. There's also a lot of modernization that's happened with that process. So you can send in digital copies. You don't just have to send in physical. There's criteria for how you should approach that. And the number of copies that you are supposed to submit depends on the format and all that kind of thing. But it's gotten a lot easier for creators to engage in that process. And the Copyright Office folks are wonderful, always happy to help. And they have a whole team that is dedicated to helping folks with questions. So I know that was a long answer, but important.
No. That was a very thorough answer and very helpful, and that has actually happened to me. So,
Oh, wow.
a lot of the things that you mentioned, and just so folks know, I did send questions to Nick beforehand. So this is just a very thorough presentation. I'm loving it. But even some of the things that I didn't ask when we met earlier or corresponded earlier,
Mhm.
it was like kismet, how you just zoomed in on things that I did have a question on. And it seems like you answered a lot of other people's questions because we really don't have any questions in our chat. So we have come to the end of our hour. Is there any last words that you want to give folks in terms of anything that you might not have had a chance to mention, or any links to anything?
Oh, man. Without going down a rabbit hole, I would just say that while we are the kind of mothership of libraries, the people who work in the Library of Congress are just as passionate about serving their neighbors as folks who work in the local public library, or if you're in an academic community, the folks that work at the university library. And we are really here to help and serve. We're your neighbors. We are really passionate about helping the folks around us. We just have more specialization than the average public library person because of how big our institution is. So please, 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 just never hesitate to contact us if we can be helpful. And I'm totally happy to be contacted individually and put you in touch with the right part of the library. There's a lot of good work that's happening at the library to demystify what it is that we do. And it's even just a different way of framing how we exist as a national library without actually changing the core functions of what we do. And it's really exciting, the engagement that we have all over the country. I didn't even get into things like if you have a veteran in your life, we have an oral history project through the Veterans History Project where you can take that oral history and get it into the library's collections.
Wow.
We have COVID reflection oral history project with StoryCorps. There's so many ways where you can actually take a really proactive role in making sure that the stories that you feel are important in your life and your community can be part of the national story. And we do everything that we can to create those opportunities to help us with our efforts, because we can't do it all. We can't ever accomplish the comprehensiveness that we want. It really takes the entire community of people who benefit from the Library of Congress, even if they don't know about the benefits,
Well,
to
I do
participate.
I want to say that it is because of people like you,
Oh, thank you.
and I will say that I specifically reached out to you because you are an excellent follow on social media,
Oh, thank you.
because
Likewise.
even in your follows on social media, you are sharing the wonderful things that you do and you present through the Library of Congress, and you are just you're an integral part of our community, and I thank you so much.
Thank
You
you.
and just so folks know, I asked and it was an automatic yes, that this is the kind of thing that you would do, and it was without hesitation. So I appreciate you tremendously, and I hope to
Likewise.
stay continue connected. So if things in the future, and updates on the wonderful things that you're doing at the Library of Congress. So thank you, Nick, and thank you everyone who came out today. Have a
Thank you,
great
everyone. Happy
yes,
National Poetry Month.
that's right. All right, take care,
Take it
everybody.
easy. Bye-bye.